Um, if you can hear me and see my screen, then say okay in the chat. In the chat. Okay, excellent. Okay. Is there a reason that we're keeping the cameras off? Sonia? Or okay. Apologies for the technical difficulties to begin with. So again, this morning we're talking about teaching, speaking, and listening, which I'm sure you all know a lot about. And I'm eager to hear you share some of your ideas, and I'll also share some of mine. So before we begin, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I don't think I know many of you, since most of the ETFs that I worked with are no longer in the program, but I'm Megan. I studied linguistics and education, and I've been with Fulbright for 4 years, going on my 5th year. I was full-time for 2 years, and then I've been a local advisor since 2022. So I've gotten the chance to see a lot of classes of ETAs and ETFs with their local teachers. I've gotten to attend a lot of workshops and see students, yay, you're back, see teachers and students together. So I love stealing good ideas from teachers and sharing good ideas with other teachers too. So today I will be sharing some ideas and also hearing some of your ideas too as practical things that you can do in the classroom. So partly I want you to be using the chat, and then there'll be some time for breakout rooms as well. So I wish we could all be together in the same room, but we'll take what we can get. So for now, we're online. We'll have to make do with what we have. Okay, so now, just very extremely briefly, I want to know who you are by changing your display name. So you can go to the participant list and change. So participant list, next to your name, there should be a more, and you can rename. So just for this meeting, you can change your name to the name that you want to be known as. So you don't have to use a last name, just could be a nickname or your first name. And then if you're a junior high, put JH in the front, especially for junior high, but the elementary can do that as well. So put EL in front of your name, so that when we go to breakout rooms, Sonia will know who to put in which group. And then put it in front of your name so that, that alphabetically it'll be easier for her. And then you can add your site initials and your pronouns afterwards. So for example, if I was Megan teaching junior high in Taidong, my name would look like this. Okay, so take a second. If you don't know which school you're, you could put a question mark or you can leave it blank if you're not sure. Or you could write which ones that you've taught at before if you're not sure which school to put it you're at before. Many of the things will be a little bit more geared towards elementary, but I like to have the junior high ETFs or ETAs work together because they can often have a lot of great ideas for each other that aren't as relevant for the elementary school teachers. So take a second to do that. Great. Okay. And now for a quick warm up, I want you to find a recording method. So if you have an iPhone, often you can use voice memos, which is this, the icon in the top right, or Android is called voice recorder. You could use a website, or you could just take a video of yourself. And I want you to record yourself for 2 minutes speaking about the following prompt. So the questions are, what are the biggest challenges about teaching, listening, and speaking to your students, and what are some possible solutions? So this is the topic, this is the prompt, and I want you to speak, don't do it yet, but speak for 2 minutes about this topic. And here are some rules. I want you to definitely turn your microphone off on Zoom, but can you turn your cameras on for this part? And it would be great if you had your camera on the whole time, but especially for this part, turn your cameras on so that I can see you, everybody talking to themselves. You do not have to share this clip with me, so don't feel like you need to worry about what you'll say. I won't know what you're saying, but I want you to show me proof that you did it. So please do actually make a recording, and then you must speak without stopping. So no pauses to think, just try to speak as much as possible. Try to stay on topic, but speaking continuously is more important. So even if you say, what are the most common challenges in teaching, listening, and speaking? I don't know. Maybe, well, I can think of a challenge for writing, but right? So we don't have to have super coherent thoughts, but I just want you to keep talking just to see what this exercise feels like. And if you want an extra challenge, you can also try to answer in a different language if you want to practice your Chinese or another language, or you could use a combination of languages, right? So I want you to find an app and record yourself speaking for 2 minutes. Okay. So starting, let's see, I'll get, give a quick okay or thumbs up if you have something ready. Okay, so I see some cameras on. Excellent. Okay, so starting now, just record yourself and start speaking and don't stop. I want to see lots of people talking. Any ideas you have about this? All right, I think that was about 2 minutes for most of you, depending on when you started. So go ahead and stop your recording, and now I want you to show me your video clip. your audio clip. Show me that you did video. Excellent. All right. I could see you all speaking. Great. Okay. So I obviously didn't hear what you said, but hopefully that at least got the juices flowing of thinking about this topic, and was also a little exercise that you could try with your students too, to have them just practice speaking nonstop about a topic, or even if it's just saying random words that they might know, so that they are more focused on speaking fluency than making sure every word is correct. So throughout this workshop, we'll have hopefully lots of good ideas, lots of opportunities for you to share some of those ideas that you thought of. And I'm looking forward to hearing some of the things you said, but you don't have to send that to me. You can if you want to, if you thought you had some great ideas during your brainstorm. If you can, it'd be great if you keep your camera on, but I know that's not always convenient for everyone. So during certain parts, I'll tell you when it's more important to keep it on. Okay, so now I want you to just give me a quick summary of what you talked about, but first, don't actually send it. So type it in the chat. So I'll give you a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds. Type, if you're two people together, you can talk about what you said and type a few things. So each person try to write at least 2 challenges or problems that you thought of. So it could be just a keyword or a full sentence, but don't send it in the chat until I say. And so when you've finished typing, give me a thumbs up, and then I'll tell you when to send it. Don't send it, Lisa. Let's see who can follow instructions. That's hard. Okay, ready? I see some people still typing. Okay, are we ready? Okay, 3, on the count of 3, hit enter. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Great. Okay, so now take a second to look through the responses. I think you can give a thumbs up or a response directly on the chat. So if you have some that you agree with or you want to comment on, go ahead and type under them. But some of the ideas: student confidence, feeling nervous, lack of confidence, lack of feedback, not knowing a word, getting stuck. Okay, so I'll take a few notes. Not being able to understand some of the students. Okay, yeah, accents can be an issue too, and them not understanding you and you not understanding them. Engagement and mistakes, motivating students, shy. Yeah, giving time for practicing, that's one we'll talk about for sure. Anxiety and speaking. Cool, nonverbal side in terms of gestures, body language, and intonation. Insecure, lots of great stuff. boredom. So yeah, so engagement and language barrier and confidence. Great. Okay, so we can see we have a lot of similar ideas, and we will talk about some of those solutions together soon. So for this workshop, I thought of a few common challenges myself, and then some things that I want to share with you about them. And then I want you to discuss those challenges as well. And then we'll add a few from what you just mentioned. I didn't specifically highlight the anxiety and confidence one. So that's one we can talk about more too. So the ones that I will go over specifically, time. So we only have time to teach the textbook. And then they don't understand or speak enough English for me to be able to do these activities. Engagement, and also differentiation, or like the stronger students are the only ones who end up speaking up. Okay. And then other ones. So the first challenge, we only have time to teach the textbook. This is one that is really common, and especially sometimes the ETAs and ETFs are frustrated with wanting to add more speaking, but their LET is so we don't have time for speaking. We have to focus on the textbook or on sentence patterns or something. So I could give you 20 different 1 hour long speaking activities, but it wouldn't help because you wouldn't be able to actually use them in your classes, because most of the time you're not going to have the opportunity for that much of a solid block for speaking. So what are some things that we can do? One thing is to make sure that English class is in English as much as possible. So different teachers have different views on this, and I'm not going to tell you you must speak English 100% of the time, or you must try to create an all English environment. But just in terms of time, the more we spend speaking Chinese, the less they hear in English. And even if it's 50-50, if you're saying the same thing twice, then they can just completely ignore the English part and just listen for the Chinese. So one way to increase both speaking and especially listening in English is to focus on making more of the class in English. It doesn't have to be 100%, and especially depending on who your LAT is and their teaching style, that might not be a reasonable goal. But we can talk about how to make that, how to make steps towards that. And then try to have short but frequent speaking opportunities throughout the lesson, instead of just taking a big section for a speaking practice or group work, because then they tend to kind of freeze up and not know what to do if they don't practice speaking for a long time and then are suddenly given 10 minutes to do an activity. And then letting everyone talk at once. What are some different ways that we can have lots of students talking at the same time so that we can be more efficient with our time? And then outside of class, what are some listening and speaking activities we can do? So first, one of the common complaints I hear, or one of the common concerns I hear from my advisees, is often that either they end up speaking more Chinese than they want to themselves, or their LAT is speaking a lot of Chinese and the class ends up being having a lot of Chinese, and they don't know how to get out of that situation. It can kind of be a bad habit or a comfort zone that can be hard to get out of. So one way would be to try to focus on making sure that you don't speak too much Chinese in class. And you could try to cut it out cold turkey and not speak any. Or you could just slowly remind yourself to use Chinese as a last resort. But of course, as teachers, we want our students to understand us. We don't like it when they don't understand. And the easiest way to do that is to speak their language. But that doesn't help with them actually learning learning English and learning to understand and be comfortable with understanding English. So first, make sure that you're finding other ways to make yourself understood, which we'll talk about, instead of just resorting to using Chinese. And it's okay to have those uncomfortable moments. So when you're saying something and your students don't understand you, don't be afraid of that, because that is actually where the learning happens. When you try to say something, they don't get it, they're struggling, you try again, and then the wheels start turning and they finally get it. That's where they actually learn, and that's where they build their confidence, because they see that they can go from not understanding something to understanding something. Whereas if it is something, if you're only speaking simple English that they already know, that's not challenging, and that's not confidence building, because they already know that they know how to say, how are you? How old are you? But it's, if they can get from not understanding to understanding, then they can learn a lot more and be more motivated. So one thing I sometimes tell my advisees is, especially for those who have challenges with LETs who overuse Chinese, is instead of just telling your LET, please stop using Chinese, or trying to cut it out completely, carve out a time in your class. Maybe it's 5 minutes one day, and then maybe it's 10 minutes the next day, or maybe it's a 3-minute activity, and make it into kind of a game and a challenge for your students. Allow them to, so announce that you want to do this particular activity only in English, and that includes yourself and it includes your LET. And you can let them kind of police you, and have fun with it. You can accidentally speak Chinese and see if they catch you, and have them catch each other, and just make it an exciting challenge to see if they can do this activity completely in English. Make it something that's doable, and then celebrate that when they're like, see, you were able to, for 5 minutes, no one translated for you, and you were able to understand most of what I said, or most of the activity. So start with small pieces, and then you can slowly build that into a habit, or using more English and less Chinese. You can also teach your students some sort of phrase. These are not necessarily perfect phrases, but you can think of your own. Maybe you have a better one, and if you can share in the chat if anyone uses one, that you can have your students remind each other, or remind the LET, to use more English. And again, I would start using that in a kind of a game, or like a fun situation, but then they could use that more often in their regular activities as well. Has anyone tried that, or have a phrase that they use? Listening and speaking homework. So outside of class, so you don't have a lot of time in your classes to have everybody speaking all at once. But with technology, and sometimes if you have some spare time, you can find a lot of extra time for students to be practicing outside of class time. So you could assign students to come to you outside of class. I think this is one that many ETAs and ETFs have done before. If you have, you can type in the chat some ideas or some suggestions that you've done before. So some teachers have done like sticker boards, where they have students come to them during their spare time, and they ask questions from the textbook, or have them say sentence patterns or have a short back and forth with the students, and then they get a sticker or some prize to encourage students to come find you during their break time. That is a great way to also get to know your students and kind of break the ice, because some students will find you and want to be your best friend no matter what. But other students need an excuse to break the ice. So they might really want to talk to you, but they are afraid to approach you or they don't want to bother you. So if you make them come to you, then sometimes that can lead. Maybe you just want them to ask you one question, or you ask them one question, or you just want them to read the vocabulary out loud. It doesn't have to be a specific speaking task. You can then turn that into a longer conversation. Has anyone tried this in their classes before with their students? Yeah. Any specific recommendations or suggestions from people who have done it before? What has worked? Often with holidays, people will use this one. Right, so it could be something outside of class where they come and talk to you. But you could also have them record themselves. So you don't have to necessarily be there listening to them speak. So I made you all speak, even though I didn't hear everything that you said during the warm-up. Did some of you maybe talk about something else or not do what I asked you to do? Sure, maybe, but for the most part, you got some speaking practice during that time. And it cost me 2 minutes of the workshop. Whereas if I had to listen to every single person talk for 2 minutes, then we wouldn't have any time to talk about anything else. So having students record themselves can also help with the anxiety problem. It might initially make them feel more anxious to record themselves, but over time they can see that it's not as scary, and they can kind of get used to speaking more. One thing to remember with this is you don't have to, like a lot of teachers, and if you're trying to discuss this with your LET, they might resist this idea because it sounds like a lot of work, right? If you have 300 students and you want them to talk for a minute after class, every class, that sounds like a huge workload for you, but you don't have to actually listen to every student every time. They just have to be aware that that you have to hold them accountable to some extent. So, for example, you could check every once in a while, or you could just every time draw one person's name and have them play it for you after class. Or if you're worried about one student needing extra practice, maybe you just look at their audio. So there's websites, I don't know if anyone has used for uploading things like that onto a website, where you could have all of the students put their assignments online, and then you could see whether they've done it or not. And whether you go in and check is a different story. You don't need to be checking every time, but they're still getting lots of extra practice. That makes sense? Okay, let's see. Yeah, playing with students during the break. Yeah, so definitely like getting to know your students and talking to them during the break is great. At the beginning, especially if they're kind of shy or are afraid to approach you, then I would suggest having at least a couple times where you make them come to you, and maybe it's just one class at a time. So maybe it's just, this week is class 305 or whatever. But so that you're not bombarded with students all the time and they never have time to talk to you. But you can have them try to at least sometimes come talk to you so that they get in that habit, and then later throughout the semester they're more willing to play with you. Okay, paying them for talking to you. Okay, I like that, Robbie. Could they buy anything with their Robbie bucks?
There was like I had a store at the end, so candy, pencils, stuff like that.
um, yeah, so different rewards and encouragement. Okay, talk and talk. Where they come in? Jennifer, is that talking to you specifically or talking to each other? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So different things that you can try. You can talk to different LETs or different ETAs and ETFs to see what's worked for them. But you can also think outside the box, especially if you feel like you don't have enough time during class to maybe with the structure, with the way your LET teaches, to add enough speaking in class, and you can think about out of class things as well. Then during class, we can also let everyone talk at once. Why do we need to do this? If you only let one person talk at a time, then the maximum amount of time, even if you and your LET say absolutely nothing, is the number of students divided by 40 minutes or 45 minutes, which is a very small amount of time. But if you introduce some activities where more than one student is talking at the same time, you can increase this dramatically. So in the warm-up, I had you talk for 2 minutes. Of course, you wouldn't do that exact activity with your students, but in 2 minutes, I gave every student an extra 2 minutes of talking. So that would have been, if there was only one person talking at a time, the maximum amount of time you could talk in this workshop would only be a few minutes maximum. And this is something that you might need to remind your LETs as well, because sometimes your students and also the LETs are worried about making sure everything is correct and that they have feedback. So it's okay if they're not always correct. You won't be able to hear everyone talking at once, and that's okay too. So they need the time and the space to be able to practice and make mistakes, and that's part of learning. One thing I would recommend, if they are so give them some sort of feedback. Don't let them just talk and then never check in with them or never hold them accountable. For example, you can walk around the room and then pick up on a few common mistakes and then write them on the board afterwards. So maybe they're forgetting their third person S, or they're pronouncing a certain vocabulary word not quite right, or something. You can highlight some of the common mistakes without pointing out anyone in particular, and tell the whole class that. You can also highlight some of the great things that students said, or some interesting things that they said as well. And another thing to keep in mind, this can be really challenging or chaotic at first, but don't give up. So if anyone has tried think, pair, share with their students, have you tried that? Where you have two students talk to each other, talk to the person next to you. That can be very chaotic at first, because half the students will turn to their partner and speak Chinese about their weekend, and half the students will turn to their partner and look like a deer in the headlights and have no idea what to say. And then most teachers will think, oh no, that was terrible, I'll never do that again. But students can learn, they can be trained, and over time it gets better. So it's uncomfortable at first. It might be chaotic at first, but it can really make a big difference if you can train your students to get used to, okay, we're gonna have like 1 minute or even 30 seconds or even 15 seconds, tell your partner something, and then we'll move on. And maybe I'll check in with you and see what you said, and maybe I won't. So they can get in the habit of just quickly switching between talking to their partner and then coming back to the class. So think, pair, share. This is a common thing that people hear about in workshops, but it might be harder. I see it less often in actual classes, partly because it might be intimidating to actually do. If anyone has done this in class, maybe type in the chat some of the things that you use it for. I like to use it for even really simple things like I'm going over comprehension check questions. Tell your partner what you think for number one, or how are you this morning? Ask your partner, how are you? Tell them how you are. So it could just be a 30-second or very short part of every of many parts of the lesson, so that they get used to actually speaking. And then the anxiety is slightly lower when it's talking to one person instead of talking to the entire group. Yeah, using it for checking their understanding. You say, okay, tell your partner what we're going to do. It doesn't always have to be in English. So it's still a good way to increase engagement, even if you're, so for example, asking them what they're doing, or maybe you want to brainstorm about a topic. But then when you want them to practice speaking in English, then make sure that they are speaking in English and they have the scaffolding to actually do that. Any other ideas for that one? No. Okay, find someone who, have you tried before? Find someone who, often this is a worksheet with some boxes that you, for example, find someone who likes pizza, find someone who has a sister, and you have to stand up and walk around and ask people questions. Do you have a sister? Do you like pizza? And if they say yes, then they sign their name. But you can't have the whole page with Robbie answering every single square. You have to find different people for different squares. Speed dating. Has anyone heard of or tried? Speed dating is you can have everybody talking to a partner, but then you change the partner. So maybe it's 2 rows and one row doesn't move and the other row rotates. They can, so maybe you could do this as a review when you want to take the time to move their desks so that they're in an interesting position, and then you can have them talk to one person and then switch. And the topic could be anything. So it could be free conversation, or it could be very specific tasks. It could be answer this question. It could be student A, quiz your partner about vocabulary from unit 2, and then switch, and then student B, quiz your partner about vocabulary from unit 2. So you can switch different things so that they're all practicing at the same time. One nice thing about this is it can help with keeping things moving, so that you're not spending 10 minutes trying to find a different partner every time you want to have a speaking activity. And because students often feel certain ways about talking to certain people in their classes, and so it's not a big deal if you're going to be talking to this person for 1 minute, that person for 1 minute, this person for 1 minute. So there's less drama involved in, like, oh no, I don't want to be with him, or things like that. So that's something you could try as well. Mingle and switch is similar, except they're standing and moving around. So there's some topic or something that they have to do. Maybe it's practice the dialogue. Maybe it's ask your partner how old they are and where they're from, or maybe it's answer whatever question that you want them to answer. So they stand up, find a partner, and then when you say switch, they have to find a different partner. And you can teach them phrases like thank you, thanks, goodbye, or do you have a partner, or may I join you? So if it's a group of if everybody has a partner and there's one student who doesn't, you can teach that student the phrase may I join you, to kind of jump into a conversation. And so with things like speed dating or mingle and such, you have to have a kind of a classroom management strategy in mind. Maybe it's a bell, or maybe it's some way of letting them know, okay, we're going to stop talking and we're going to listen and move on. Okay, yeah. So having the students talk to you individually as a group, great. Yeah. So that's great when you have two teachers too. So one teacher can kind of be the eyes and ears and listen to make sure that everyone is on task, and also to make sure that that you're kind of picking up on some mistakes or some feedback that you want to give students. But sometimes you can also be there and talking to the students individually as well. Great, cool. And then other group work as well can have is a good way to have students talk to each other at the same time to use the time more efficiently. What other ways have you thought of that you can have the students talking at the same time? Any other, so that we're not having, yeah, is that Elizabeth?
Oh, something that I did that also exercised, I think, some critical thinking, is I would cut out like a dialogue, so it would be in English and Chinese, and they had to first match like the English to the Chinese translation for like each part of the dialogue, and then for the students who could complete that, my next instruction for their group would be to put the dialogue in order. So they had to kind of like comprehend like, oh, like how this conversation would go. And then once they finished that, like, I would have them like practice the dialogue with each other. And I found this was like also differentiated because like the first part, like matching the translation to the English, like for some students that was like all they would get done for the whole class. Whereas like some students would get through like all of the 3 different tasks.
Yeah, great. So having different tasks that can take different amounts of time depending on students' level is great. And then they're working together to do this task and using English as they're doing it. Yeah, great idea. Cool. Thanks for sharing. Other thoughts or comments on this one? So one thing to keep in mind is try to include enough scaffolding so that they're actually able to complete the task, especially in English. So for example, if it's find someone who, then maybe on the bottom of the worksheet say, do you have ... or are you blank, or give them different clues that they can refer back to, so that they're not just stuck and not sure what to say at all. Okay, let's see, it's already 10:50. So let's skip this this breakout room. I was going to have you talk in a breakout room, but instead let's take a break, but think about this one. And then when you come back from the break, share at least one idea in the chat or with your microphone on, about what are some other ways that we can deal with this issue of we don't have enough time to teach to do a lot of speaking activities. Okay, so come back at 11 with an idea. The one Okay. Welcome back. So it's 11. Come back and turn your cameras on if you can. So I know you're here. And go ahead and you can start with your idea in the chat, or if someone wants to raise their hand and share an idea, feel free to do that as well. So going back to the challenge of time. Any thoughts? Warm-up activities, yes, warm-up activities are really important. Pre-activities, yeah. So we only have time to teach the textbook, but we can speak a lot about the textbook, and you'll actually learn a lot more from speaking about the textbook than just studying the textbook. Role plays are great. One thing I like to do with role play is, instead of just practicing the dialogue, have variations of the dialogue, so that it's not just reading out loud, but maybe they could invent their own, they can change certain words, or try to make it more their own. The partner. Taking textbook vocabulary and sentences and incorporating them into a larger activity or a more interesting lesson. Yeah, right. So sometimes we feel like the textbook is not that interesting. The readings are not necessarily the most interesting, but you can find a way to make it more relevant to their lives, or something that they'd be more interested in, but still using the sentence pattern and vocabulary. Yeah, adding new stories, giving them a chance to be creative. Great ideas. Okay. So another challenge that we often face is that we feel like our students don't understand or speak enough English to be able to do the tasks that we want them to do. Some of the solutions that I thought of for this, I could go into each of these in more detail, but for time, I'll be brief. I think most of these you have an idea of already, but take a second and look at these 5 things, and in the chat, write either a question if you're not sure about what I mean by these, or tell me what you think one of them means, and give me an example of one of these things. So you can either ask a question if you don't know what I mean, or if you're not sure what that thing is, or give an example. Okay, good question. Eliciting. Any other scaffolding? Okay. The scaffolding, some of you might have seen in some workshops before. No? Okay, yeah, adding redundancy is okay, cool. So modeling, I think you're probably the most familiar with, right? So there's different ways that we can model, we can demonstrate the activity, so that we're not just telling them what to do, we're showing them what to do. You can choose the student to do it with you, and you can also model what not to do. So that could be both in terms of language and classroom management. So you can model, for example, if you're teaching the dialogue reading, you can show them, hello, what is your name? Is an example of a bad model, like a model of what not to do during the reading. We can model to get them to understand quickly and to reinforce the link between the English and the the meaning without resorting to Chinese. So they're both understanding faster and they're actually learning as well. What I mean by adding redundancy is give students different chances to grasp at what you're saying. So that could be both like instead of just saying it once, have them, you could say it and demonstrate it and have it on the board and show a picture, right? So you could have the word cat, a picture of a cat, you could meow like a cat, you could ask them question like, is this a cat? Is that a cat? Right? So if you just say cat one time and a student understands, they should know what that means. But adding redundancy allows students to grasp at what to grasp different ways of getting your point. Does that make sense? So sometimes when I go to observations, I will tell the teachers, oh, this part was great, but maybe next time you could say this instead, or you could do this instead. And sometimes they say, oh, I said that. And I say, okay, if I missed it, I'm a native speaker trying to pay attention. I'm engaged. It's my job. I'm an adult. And if I missed it, how many of your students missed it? If you only say it once, that's not enough, right? And redundancy also, Tyler, you can also include reviewing previous material so that you're not expecting students to absorb 100% of what you say all of the time. You're giving them the chance to giving them the chance to catch different parts of it. Actually, prior knowledge, I think most people already know that one. Eliciting, there were some questions on. So eliciting is basically just getting students to say something. For example, you could, if you're teaching vocabulary, you can elicit the meaning of the words. You can say, or you can brainstorm. So before I told you some common problems about speaking and listening, I elicited some common problems from you. I asked you to think of it and I told you to tell me them, right? So eliciting is a way to activate their prior knowledge and help them understand the concepts, and then become more interested. So if I say, how do you say radiation in Chinese? And then I ask you to think about it. Then maybe some of you know, and you're excited to tell me. Maybe some of you have no idea, but now you kind of want to know. And but if I just tell you what it is, then you might think, why are you telling me? Why do I care? So eliciting is a way to get them to practice more speaking as well, because they're actually saying things, and they're listening to what you're saying and speaking back. So almost anytime I teach a new vocabulary or a new sentence pattern or new concept, I first will ask students what they know about it, or ask them to even guess. Sometimes it's okay to guess as well. Scaffolding. So Robbie had a question about scaffolding. Who can help him? So can anyone type in the chat a definition of what scaffolding is? You can use one of these sentence starters. I think scaffolding helps our students. Any ideas? You can hit enter as soon as you finish typing. No. Setting up learning structures that can support multiple types of learners. Okay. Examples to work off of. Right. Okay. So yeah, scaffolding is basically anything we do to let our students do more with help than they can do by themselves. Right. So if they can't just introduce themselves by themselves, they can't just, okay, introduce yourself in English. If they can't do that, how can you help them get to there? Maybe you have sentence starters. Maybe you have vocabulary words. Maybe you have a model, right? So scaffolding is anything we do that allows students to do more with help than they can do without help. And this is really key for a lot of the speaking activities, because we want to, as some of you mentioned in the problem of confidence and anxiety, we want to allow them to do achievable things. So challenging, but achievable, doable things, so that they can build their confidence and become more motivated and actually practice things. If it's not challenging, then they won't learn anything. And if it's not achievable, they won't be able to learn anything either. And they will also feel like they failed. So different ways we can give scaffolding. So scaffolding is a word you might hear in workshops and teaching, in the teaching world. But it basically just means all of the help that we can give students so that they can do something with your help that they can't do by themselves. So modeling, vocabulary, sentence starters, breaking the task into mini tasks. Maybe you allow them to look in their books, etc. Great. So another thing to keep in mind is that scaffolding is great, but once the building can stand by itself, we need to remove the scaffolding. So don't forget that we can have sentence starters and modeling and all of this extra help, but sometimes we want to take away the scaffolding so that the students can try to do the tasks by themselves when they're ready. And another thing to keep in mind is this doesn't have to be all the same for all of your students at the same time. So in one class, you're doing an activity and maybe some students need to look at the book and other students can do it without looking at the book. Or some students need an extra model or extra support and other students don't. So you can offer scaffolding at different levels for different students, which can be something that you decide. These students can look in the book, those students don't, or you can challenge them and let them choose for themselves. So you can say, for example, I want you to try to not look in the book, but if you really need to, you can. But see if you can do it without looking, for example. Okay. Now, what are some other ways that we can, so going back to scaffolding, what are some specific ways that we can scaffold during speaking activities? Can you think of any activities that you've done where you were able to give them some support and allow them to actually complete the task? Sentence starters are great, yeah. What other things? Gestures, example sentences. Yeah, so some of the things that we mentioned already can be used as scaffolding as well. So some of these concepts have a lot of overlap in terms of what we use them for. Eliciting can also be a way of scaffolding by asking them to think first about specific parts of it. Yeah, giving them sentence patterns and choices, sentence frames, pictures. yeah, pictures can be really helpful as well. Having them work together can also be a way of scaffolding, giving them time to prepare, having them practice first and then and then perform the task. So we want to, as much as possible, create situations where the students are succeeding in their speaking task instead of not being able to know what to say or to complete the task. All right. Okay. Now, third challenge in terms of engagement. So this is one that a lot of you mentioned at the beginning, that maybe they're just not interested or they don't have anything to say. First, as I'm talking, tell me in the chat what are some ideas you have for this topic. So my students aren't interested, they don't have anything to say. What are some ways that you can deal with this challenge? So you can keep typing that while I continue. But here are some ideas that I had. One thing to try to keep in mind to do, at least, I would say at least every class, try to create some opportunities for real communication, even if it's small, right? So if you're talking about colors, you're not going to be able to solve, some very philosophical questions, but you can still have a little bit of unscripted communication. So sometimes I see teachers, I go to a class and the students end up speaking quite a bit during the 40 minutes. It's usually elementary school. But by the end of the 40 minutes, the students have spoken a lot, usually in unison, and I have learned nothing about any of them, because everything that they've said is what the teacher expected them to say, right? So, so for example, if I say, let's see, Tyler from Pingdong, what color is this?
Is it blue?
Blue. Very good. Can you say a whole sentence? A whole sentence.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
What color is it in a whole sentence?
The color of that pen is blue.
Okay. We can also say it's blue. Very good. Okay. Now, Alex from Zhanghua. What is your favorite color?
My favorite color is blue.
Very good. Is it really?
Yeah, actually.
But so sometimes we ask students to say something that, so if I say, Ophelia, how many sisters do you have?
I have 3 sisters.
Very good. Do you?
No.
Okay. So often we force our students to say something that's not true, which is fine, because we just want to practice the sentence pattern. It's good to be able to say I have 3 sisters, even if you don't have 3 sisters, or my favorite color is blue, even if that's not true. But also sometimes let them actually have some real communication where they tell you something real. And that's so important for kids, because they really want to, like, they don't care about their grammar. They just want to share something about themselves with you. So one example was I did a oral exam for I think it was first graders, and I had to ask, one of the questions was, can you ride a bike? And it was just a question that they'd been practicing, and all I needed was yes I can or no I can't. I don't care if this kid can ride a bike or not. It's just an oral exam of a student that I've never met before, and I just need to know, can he say yes I can, no I can't, and not yes I do or whatever else. So I said, can you ride a bike? and he's thinking. And I ask again, and he's thinking. And I'm about to go on to the next question, but I can tell he's really thinking really hard. And finally he says in Chinese, "Do training wheels count?" Because he wants to tell me the truth, and he wants to share something real with me, and he doesn't care about the grammar. He just wants to say that he can kind of ride a bike, but not really, but he's using training. He wants to share something. So that can be really motivating for speaking more in English, is to create opportunities to actually say something real. And even as an adult, when I take Chinese classes, if my teacher never asks me to share anything about my thoughts or my own life, and it's only sentence patterns and things that are something that they expect me to say, then I also get very unmotivated, and it's not as interesting. So try to learn something about your students every day. In class, out of class, both are great ways to do it. Yeah, some of you mentioned learn about their interests and try to learn them in class material. That's a great way to do it, whether it's just as a sentence pattern, or like an example sentence. If you change the random name to some person or some character that they're interested in, then suddenly the sentence is a lot more interesting. This one, maybe some of you have tried before. So you can allow communication with other people besides just you and the people within the classroom. So sometimes the ETAs and ETFs have contacted former ETAs or former foreign English teachers of the students. You could have your friends and family, or other people in the community. Some ways that people have done it, maybe people actually come to your classroom to visit. If your parents are in town, you can bring them to class and have students talk to them and ask them questions. Video calls, so if you have time, where if it works out in your class to be able to call one of your friends or something, that could be great. One thing that I would recommend as more doable and also has some advantages is have a pre-recorded audio or video clip. So it doesn't take your friend or your mom or whatever long to record like a 30-second or 1-minute video of themselves. So if your topic is introductions, or if your topic is so even in junior high, it could be a very complicated topic like global warming or giving recommendations or something more advanced. You could have them speak for a short period about that topic. Give a self-introduction, for example, and then that way you can play the video multiple times. You can pause. You can add automatic subtitles, or you could type your own subtitles if you have time. And you can have students listen multiple times to the same audio. Has anyone tried anything like that with your students before? No? Try it. I especially like a video of, so students like watching videos in general, but if it's a video talking to your class, then that is a lot more motivating than just some random video that you found online. Then you can also have them respond, maybe as a video or maybe as an audio recording. You can have them respond to that person as well. Yeah, pen pals. Have you used pen pals before, Jennifer? Okay. Yeah, pen pals they're great, but they can take a lot of legwork in terms of actually getting the logistics set up. So a quicker and also fun way would be like to have a video sort of pen pal where someone records a video for you, you play it in class, and then the students respond on their own and send it back to that person. And it doesn't have to be a long back and forth all the time, but just a quick back and forth can be really motivating. When I was teaching at a junior high, I had the students write letters to I had the previous ETA write letters to my students, write a letter to my students asking for advice, because the topic was advice in that unit, and they had to write a letter back to her. And they were so excited to actually know that their former teacher was really writing to them, and they were really writing back, and she would really actually read that. And they were a lot more motivated to do the activity, because they knew it was something real. And then podcasts as well. With my students, I have made a short podcast for new ETAs a few years ago, and they were very motivated to share real things about Taiwanese schools with new ETAs. And you can also have them do interviews and other things. So those are some ideas, but maybe you'll have some more as well. Letters to Santa, okay. And then maybe someone writes back as well. Allowing students to lie or invent an alternative reality. So this one is useful for two reasons. One is for sensitive topics. So for example, if you're talking about family, or it's Mother's Day or something, I wouldn't want you to say, for example, okay, everybody write a letter to your mother except for Joey, because we all know he doesn't have a mom, so he can write a letter to his dad, right? We don't want to single anyone out or make them feel extra uncomfortable about a sensitive topic like that. So instead, you could give everybody the chance to not just write to their mom, but they could write to someone that they care about, right? It doesn't have to be their mom, and it could even be an imaginary person. So in terms of inventing an alternative reality, one thing when I was learning French, my teacher had us create a character, and we had to answer most of the prompts through that character. And even though I'm perfectly happy to talk about my own family and my own life, it was so much more interesting to try to be creative and invent this different person and try to think about how this different person would answer things. So it was exciting to be able to, even as an adult, to be able to lie and make up things about my life. So you can try that one as well. And then guessing games, information gaps. Guessing games, does anyone have any suggestions for specific guessing games? Pretty much anything can be a guessing game. Has anyone used them successfully, or have any? I Spy. Okay, yeah, so you can have students guess different things around the classroom. That's really useful for colors as well. Lantern Festival riddles, okay. Having them guess what they mean. Yeah, guessing, especially for younger kids, can be anything. Like anytime you don't tell them something, they want to know it. All right, so like when I babysat two little boys, the older brother used to take a newspaper and cover up an advertisement and tell his little brother, I'm not going to show you this. And the little brother would get so worked up, really, really wanting to see what was under his hand, but it was not important. It was just a random thing. But not being told something, they really want to know. So they'll want to guess. So games where you, for example, say, like if you have flashcards, and the vocabulary, for example, is rooms in the house. And you can have a student draw one of the flashcards at random, and then the other students have to guess. Are you in the bathroom? Are you in the kitchen? Are you in the, so it could be, you could have them say the whole sentence pattern. You are in the kitchen, or are you in the kitchen? Or you could just have them say the vocabulary words, kitchen, bathroom, whatever, depending on what your goal is. But they have to use the target language in order to guess what the thing is. Place names, they don't know what to do in a place. They know what to do, but they don't know the English word. Okay, so they're guessing what the name is based on the. What do you mean by this one, Jennifer? The place names? Give them clues. Okay, yeah. Giving them clues about different things and having them make it mysterious and suspenseful to figure out where what the thing is. Yeah, charades are a great one. Taboo, or Pictionary, or anything like that. Yeah, taboo. Like, I go here when I'm sick. Taboo is also great because it teaches them that it's okay to not know every single word. So one of the challenges that you mentioned was students get stuck if they don't know a word, right? So they want to say something, but there's some words they don't know, so they give up. And so taboo is a fun game because it kind of forces you might feel silly saying it, but it forces you to find a way to get your point across, even if you can't use certain words. So does everyone know taboo? So for example, if you have the word piano, but you can't say music or instrument or play. So I have to say, it makes beautiful noise with my fingers and it's black and white. Okay. So you can find ways to say what you mean, and then that can boost their confidence that even if you don't know a word, you can still find a way to get your point across. Does everyone know information gaps? So information gap is maybe student A and student B, and one has some of the information and the other has other information, and you have to work together to find it. The classic one is different parts of a schedule. So what time does Johnny have math class? He has math class at 2 on Mondays, and then ask each other questions to fill out the material. So this is easier said than done, but try to find a sweet spot between these two things. First, structure versus flexibility. So if it's too structured, that's basically just like saying things exactly what you want the students are saying exactly what they're supposed to say, then they don't have a chance to make it their own. They don't have a chance to learn as much, and it's not as engaging. But if it's too flexible, go speak about global warming or go talk to a friend, then they're overwhelmed, they don't know what to do, and they don't have a direction. So find ways to include both of these. We want some structure, but also some flexibility. And then also challenging versus doable. We want that it to be difficult, but still able to, them to still be able to do the task. So another thing to keep in mind, reading aloud is not speaking. So if you, in terms of practicing speaking, don't think you're practicing speaking if all you're having your students do is read aloud or reading the dialogue aloud 20 times. That's not speaking. It's still a good thing to practice. They still need to learn how to read aloud, but that's not what we think of when we think of speaking. So it's kind of a spectrum between like reading aloud to completely free speech. And there's a lot of things in between. And that's where we mostly want to be, is somewhere in between in terms of the structure versus flexibility spectrum. So we don't want to be only in the super structured part, but we also don't want to be too flexible so that they don't know where to go. So try to create activities that are in different parts of the spectrum, ideally moving from more structured to less and less structured. And you could also have students at different points on the spectrum in terms of with your scaffolding. So for example, you can give more advanced students the option to expand on something. You can give them additional questions or more advanced questions to be working on, or different tasks that they can develop. Okay, so now I do want to try a breakout room. So Sonia, can we?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So
Danny can help.
okay. Okay. So
Hi.
let's do. Can we have Denny, if possible? Can you put? I know some people are in the same video call with their roommate, which is great. But if there's some people who are in JH, try to put those together so that the junior high and the junior high are together,
Okay.
and then groups of 4. And then, so what I want you to talk about is what are some other ways that we can increase student engagement. So if my students aren't interested, they don't have anything to say, what are some other ways that you have dealt with this situation? So you can share specific examples or more general advice as well. So let's give them 5 minutes.
Alrighty. Sorry.
What does he look like?
Good. I'm just putting them into groups.
You can start thinking of your answers while we're putting you in groups. Coming back. Remember to turn off your microphone as you come back. And if you came back already, I know some people are still in the breakout rooms. In the chat, share a few things, a few keywords or sentences that that you discussed, or any good ideas that maybe you heard from another ETF. Competition. Competition is great. Try not to always make it be, but you can remember that you can tweak the rules so that you can focus on things that you want them to focus on. So, or that you can kind of handicap them in different ways so that they can, for example, you don't always want the fastest students to win or the strongest students to win. So you can add luck, or you can make them wait before they give the answer. But yeah, sometimes competition can be really motivating. Adding students' interests, yeah, K-pop, basketball, things like that can be really exciting as well. Yeah, making sure students know it's okay to make mistakes. And yeah, this can be hard to, I mean, it's easier said than done to actually have them believe that, but try to remind them and be consistent and encourage them to like praise that, reward them, give them positive feedback for trying instead of just correcting their mistakes, and also respond to things that students actually say instead of just the language. For example, I observed a class of adults, and the teacher asked one of the students, how many countries have you been to? And the student said, I've been to 86 countries. And the teacher said, I have been to 86 countries. And then she asked someone else, and she didn't respond at all to the fact that this woman had been to 86 countries and didn't care about this thing that she was telling her. So also highlight the content of what they're saying instead of just the material. Putting them in a new environment. Yeah, that's a great way to, yeah, changing things up, putting them in a, taking them outside, or making things a little bit more unique instead of just always in the class. Great. Okay. So we have one more challenge to discuss about the speaking and listening. So one thing that commonly happens is only the strongest students will answer, because maybe they're more confident, or maybe they're the only ones who are able to answer. So different ways that we can deal with that. Teacher wait time has anyone heard of that? Some of you? No? Okay. So teacher wait time is the time that you wait before students have to give you an answer. And it's longer than, it should be longer than you are probably doing right now. Most teachers have to constantly remind themselves to add a little bit more wait time. So I'll give you an example in a second. But we want to ask different questions and also think about how we ask the questions. So how we get students to answer makes a big difference. So for example, what animal is this? Answer as fast as you can. What kind of dog? As fast as you can. Tell me what kind of dog. Okay. Maeve, yes, it is a husky. All right, good job, Maeve. Okay, now, don't tell the answer. Let's see. Florence, what kind of dog is this?
I'm honestly not sure.
What kind of dog is it? I'm waiting.
Probably like a husky mix of some sort.
I want the breed.
I don't have the breed.
Okay. You get it. Tyler, what breed is this?
I also think it's a mix of some sort, but I don't know the breed.
Tell me the breed.
Um, I have no idea. Sorry.
How about this one? Talk to your partner if you have a partner. What do you think it is? And then if you know, raise your hand. Okay, let's see. Is that Elizabeth or Elizabeth? What is it?
I think it's a Pomeranian. Rachel said Chihuahua.
Don't call me on it.
Pomeranian. Very good. Maeve, do you have a? What do you think? Again, microphone.
I think it's a Pomeranian.
It is a Pomeranian. Good job. Okay, and this one, type in the chat, but don't send it yet. And then don't send it. Minus points if you send it before I tell you. And then on the count of 3, 3, 2, 1, enter. It is a poodle. Good job. All right. And this one, talk to your partner. What is it? It is a golden retriever. All right. Okay. So now, if you were to have this slide, how would you be able to answer this? So you can type in the chat. Imagine if you have someone next to you, you can talk to your partner. Check. Great. So this one is a Finnish Spitz. I didn't know that one either, but yeah. And the first one is a Pomeranian. So why did I do that? Sometimes when teachers when people think of teacher wait time, they think that of just like waiting for the student to answer. And if the student doesn't know, they don't know. And the more that you wait is not going to make it any better if you don't give them any help. So the ones that I asked about the Finnish Spitz were actually, you as native English speakers were able to give me, and you're not terrified of me, you were able to give me a comfortable, reasonable answer of, I don't know, it might be this, which is a reasonable thing to say, but I wanted the correct answer. And sometimes teachers will just wait and the student will not know, and then that just becomes uncomfortable for everyone. So that's not what we mean by student wait time. We don't want to just leave the student hanging and make them feel uncomfortable. But first, ask a question and then call on someone. So with the Husky, I had the first person to answer as fast as you can. So Tyler answered Husky, or no, who was the first? Maeve was the first to answer Husky, and so no one else had to think about it. And maybe they would have gotten it right, but we don't know because they didn't have time to think. So if you give your students time to think first and then let them answer, then they'll be a lot more successful. For example, when I had you type poodle, maybe you would have gotten that anyway, but maybe some of you had to think for an extra second about what that actually was. So try to also adjust the rules and the rewards so that the students won't just shout out the answer. So if somebody had typed poodle first, that student wouldn't have gotten those points, or that team would be go last next time, for example, right? So in a competition, we can tweak the rules so that we don't have the dominant students answering everything first, right? So the other thing to keep in mind is ask the question before you call on someone. So if I'm picking on who was I picking on? If I was picking on Florence about the finished spits, everyone else could relax because they knew that I wasn't asking them. But if I ask first, then you have to think maybe it'll be me. So then you're preparing for the answer. How do we ask questions? This is important, and these are some options. They're not necessarily better or worse, but we should think about them in terms of our teaching objectives. So you might ask the whole class and have volunteers raise their hands. You might ask the whole class and have students shout out answers. You could ask and have students vote. So for example, who has a brother? Or who likes pizza? Or who's hungry? Or who thinks the answer is C? So all they have to do is raise their hand. And that gives you some valuable information that you can then do something else with. Maybe you call on one of those students to ask a follow-up question, or maybe you just have some more information about your students, right? So it doesn't always have to be answered in a complete sentence every time you ask a question. You can ask, wait, and then call on someone. When I say call on someone, that could be a lot of different ways. You can call on a volunteer. You can draw a number at random. Often teachers will have like sticks with the students' numbers on them. You can call on a team of students. This is another thing that I like to remind students of for speaking, especially with things like pronunciation. If everyone is talking at once, you won't be able to give them, so if everybody's saying the same thing together, you won't be able to give them good feedback on their pronunciation or whether they were correct. Maybe one student didn't say anything and another student said he liked pizza and another student said she liked pizza, and you say good job, everybody was correct, because you could only hear most of them speaking together. So instead you can call on table 1 or table 2 or just the boys or a certain subset of the students. Think, pair, share, as we mentioned before. You can have them write on a mini whiteboard before they share the answer, so that it's not always the first student to answer. You could have them answer questions, have them ask each other questions as well. What else? What are some other ways that you could ask questions, some different ways? Any other ideas for this one? No. Okay, I know it's almost 12, so I won't keep you. But yeah, Jigsaw. Do you want to elaborate on that? How do we ask about with Jigsaw, Miranda?
So Jigsaw, usually the way I've used it is like in dialogues or stories. Like you have short stories, and then I give them pieces of the story. I'm like, okay, who has what piece? Who has the matching piece to your piece? And they have to put the pieces together while talking to each other, finding those answers.
Yeah, different ways of finding partners with an actual jigsaw puzzle too. Great, thanks. Yeah, passing the ball. I usually use a stuffed animal instead of a ball because they don't hurt and they don't roll. But that's a great way to call on people, because if I want a chance so that I can throw my friend under the bus, so that I can pass it to someone else and choose who's next. Yeah, that's a great way as well. Okay. All right. So it is 12 o'clock. So we'll take an hour break. Are all of you in the same workshop this afternoon, or not necessarily? Most of you are. Okay. So we'll have a quick wrap up of the morning session after lunch, just to kind of tie up some loose ends. But otherwise, have a great lunch, and I'll see you at 1. Thanks for your participation, and see you soon.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say apologies for the technical issues. See everyone at 1 o'clock, and thank you, Miss Gilmore, for this morning's talk. And yep, see you this afternoon. All right. Bye.